blessing to be with y'all this morning. Really means, wow, that's loud. This is God. No, not really. Anyway, it really means like breath or vapor, right? And it's something that fleets, it's fleeting, something that goes away. Vanity. Solomon says it's vanity. Solomon was the richest man in all the world. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. I don't know if that's a wise man or not. I haven't exactly decided. Doesn't seem wise to me, but I'm just saying. But Solomon was the wisest man supposedly that ever lived and the wealthiest man that ever lived. And Solomon, writing this book at the end of his life, he comes to this conclusion that everything's vain, everything's vanity, that all these things we strive after in the end, they really don't matter, do they? They're really not something that affects us, something that lasts. And Solomon goes into this rant as you go through chapter 1 about how, the water runs to the ocean and it keeps going back and it comes again and that life goes on and things keep cycling. And whether you and I are in it or not, it's irrelevant that the world just keeps traveling on. And then in the end, I'll be forgotten and you'll be forgotten. And the things that we put here ultimately will really not matter, the things that we do on this earth. And it's very true. It's a very true statement, and it's something that I often think about and I've thought about a lot in the last while, and the idea that I'm just borrowing things here, that really nothing belongs to me. In Solomon's time, Solomon built this magnificent temple to God, didn't he? Solomon's temple. It was magnificent, beautiful, unbelievable. I bet when he built that temple and the Jews came to that temple and saw it, they thought, oh, this will be here forever. Nobody's ever going to tear this down. But that's not how it works in life, is it? All those wonders of the ancient world, the hanging gardens of Babylon and the great pyramids and all those things eventually faded away, didn't they? Just as you and I will fade away. You and I must look for something that endures, something that goes beyond this life, something that makes us matter, something that gives our life meaning. Because the older we get, the more we come to the conclusion that whatever I acquire in this life, whether it be a title behind my name or whether it be a house that I live in or a car that I drive or something that I possess, the older we get, the more we come to the conclusion that ultimately those things have little meaning. And I think it's because of that Solomon says in chapter 3, and chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes, I would invite you to read Ecclesiastes. It's not that long. Really, you can read it in 20 minutes. Anyway, but Solomon, we go to Ecclesiastes 3, and Ecclesiastes 3 is a chapter of the Bible that you hear a lot at funerals. It's a chapter of the Bible. Ecclesiastes 3:1 is where Solomon says there's a time for everything, a time to reap, a time to sow, right? Time to live, a time to die, time to cry, time to laugh. You know, though we hear that at funerals a lot, the first part of Ecclesiastes 3:1 through 10. But when you get down to Ecclesiastes 3:11, and this is kind of my favorite part of Ecclesiastes 3, it says he's made everything appropriate in his time. He has set eternity in their heart. And I love that passage. It's something that resonates with me. I was driving through Kansas one time years ago, and man, I hate Kansas. I'm just saying. And I hate driving through Kansas. Best time to go through Kansas at night with the radio really loud because there's really nothing to see there. But I was driving through Kansas, listening to this radio program, because that's all you can do when you're driving through Kansas. And I was listening to this radio program, and this little girl, got on there, and she said, I think there's a hole in your heart that only God can fill. And that always stuck with me. You know, in our life, it seems like we're always searching for something. We live in such a culture of acquisition, don't we? You know, we're taught almost from the times that we're kids, time we're little. We're taught to get stuff, right? To have stuff, to acquire stuff. More toys, right? Have more toys. If you have more toys, it's better, right? If you have more stuff, it's better. And as we get older, we just continue that mentality because the world drives that into us. And the world drives into us this concept that if we possess things, we'll be happy, right? I mean, if you watch commercials on TV, nobody ever buys a new car or pickup and they're not happy about it. I mean, right? I mean, they're always happy, right? Nobody ever gets anything, they're not happy because they want you to think that that's going to make you happy. And if I have enough stuff, if I have enough things, if I have meaning in my life, if I have a degree or a title behind my name, or if I have a plaque in my honor, that somehow that's going to give my life this ultimate meaning. But then the older you get and the more you acquire, and you come to this point that you realize that there's no meaning in that doesn't really give me any fulfillment. There's no joy in that. There's no meaning in that because we realize it's fleeting, it's vanity, it's vain. And we realize the vanity of our existence. And yet Solomon says here in Ecclesiastes 3 that God's put eternity within our heart. And the only way we're ever really going to be satisfied, the only way we're really going to be filled, the only way we're really going to be content is if we fill our heart with what God has intended to go in there. And once we do that, that's where we truthfully find contentment within our being. You know, contentment is something to be desired. To be content with who you are, with what you are, with what God has placed in your life for you to be content with. And to look towards something more. God has put eternity within our heart. I often use this at funerals because I know there's people at funerals that I'm preaching to who are atheists, who don't believe in God. And the only question I always want to ask an atheist or somebody that doesn't believe in God is I always want to ask them, do you think that all there is to you is what is right here? Because truthfully, if you're really true with yourself, I don't think there's a single person alive that really believes this is all there is to me. We just don't. We're just not made like that. Whether or not we acknowledge God, or whether or not we acknowledge a Creator, or whether or not we acknowledge Jesus Christ, the basic question remains, do we really believe this is all we are? And I don't. And I don't think many people do. We always look towards eternity, look towards something else, look towards something more than what's here. This life is fleeting at best. A vapor, James says, that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. This life at best is fleeting. What do we do? How do we live? How do we find meaning in a life that seems to have no meaning? Solomon wrestled with that, didn't he? Sometimes I think we all wrestle with that. Vanity of vanity, he said. All is vanity. Death is the great equalizer, is it not? In death, all of us are the same. When we breathe our last, all of us are in the same. We're all in the hand of God. Are we not? Death is a great equalizer. Ecclesiastes 5 Solomon says, guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen, rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know they are doing evil. Guard your steps as you go to the house of God and come to listen. Come to listen to what God has to say, to put it within your heart, to place it within your life, to know God, and not just to know God, but to be known by God. Meaning within my life, I thought about that a lot, and I've thought about that a lot, of course, the last few days for obvious reasons, and I think we always kind of get to that place, and maybe we shouldn't go there, but we do. But I've thought about that. What's important to me? What's valuable to me? If you took everything away, what would I hold dear? What would I hold true? What really matters? And you know, at the end of the conversation I had with myself, I determined that there was only about 3 or 4 things in this life that really, really matter to me. And that everything else, to be honest, I really don't care about it. Right? And of all those things that really, really matter to me in my life, there's not one of them that has a title. Promise you. Not one of them has a deed. The things that matter to me in my life, you can't buy. They're priceless. They're irreplaceable. You know, Solomon knew it. He had everything. Everything. Anything his heart could desire. If you read the book of Ecclesiastes, he'll tell you that. He says, I satisfied myself with everything known to man. Had it all, done it all, saw it all. And he says, it's all vanity. It doesn't matter. I often wonder, in our lives, do we take care of the things that matter the most to us, or do we spend our days taking care of things that in the end don't matter that much to us? Do we spend time with God? Do we spend time with the people we love? Do we take time for things that are really important? You know, at the end of the day, most of the things that you spend time on will never love you back. Do you agree with me? They're not going to love you back. But yet we know we have to do those things. I understand that. We know there's things in life we have to take care of, things in life we have to do. But we also have to find that balance in our life of the things that are important. Solomon really talks about the now. Enjoying this minute, this instant, this second. You know, at the end of your day, do you ever stop and think that you'll never do that day again? That day's gone. You're never going to do that day again. Whatever you did that day, you'll never do that day again. You know, if you really think about your life that way, it really changes your life. Because if you really think about it, every day that I make myself miserable, every day that I get mad, every day that I'm angry, every day that I choose to be sad, is one day I'll never get that back. Will I? I'll never get that chance back. Solomon says, worry about the now. Worry about today. Jesus said, worry about today. Tomorrow will take care of itself, right? Is there not enough evil for tomorrow? Worry about today. Sometimes I get so caught up in my tomorrows that I forget to live my todays. I get so caught up in thinking about next week or next year or next month that I forget to enjoy the now. I forget to enjoy what I have right now, right this instant, right this place, right this second, what you have. You'll never have this day again to sit here at this exact time with these brothers and sisters in Christ, to love the Lord, to worship Him, and to be with one another. Cherish your nows, cherish your minutes, cherish your seconds, because Solomon knows, as we all know, that it's all fleeting and it's all vanishing. Here's what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and to enjoy oneself and all one's labor, which he toils under the sun. During the few years of his life which God has given him, this is the reward. Enjoy your now. It's all great to save up for tomorrow, to save up for the future, but you're just saving it for somebody else to use it. Am I right? You're just saving it for somebody else to have it. Solomon says, enjoy it. Enjoy what you have now. Enjoy your days. Enjoy your minutes. And enjoy the now. That's your reward. Why do you work? Why do you labor? Why do you toil? To enjoy it in the now. And that's something sometimes I forget to do, and I think sometimes we all forget to do it. We worry so much about tomorrow, we steal from today. And we need to take today and cherish it and enjoy it, and every day of our lives and cherish it and enjoy it and live it. Because that's exactly why God gave it to us, to do that with, is it not? In Ecclesiastes 9, go then eat your bread in happiness and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let your clothes be white all the time. You know, in Jewish, you know, when you mourned, when you wept, you would put ashes over your clothes. You'd wear dark clothes. You would put ashes over your clothes, and you wouldn't fix your hair. You wouldn't oil your hair. Remember, Jesus says when you fast, don't fast like the hypocrites do, right? But put on clean clothes and put oil on your head, and don't let the world know that you're fasting, because that's how they grieved and that's how they did it. They would put ashes on their clothes and rent their clothes, and they wouldn't put oil on their hair, and people would know they were in distress. And here Solomon says, be in white clothes all the time. Anoint your head with oil all the time, right? Be in the now. Enjoy the now. Enjoy life with a woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given you under the sun. I love that passage. And I think it's both directions, right? Enjoy life with your husband all the fleeting days of your life. Enjoy your relationships. That's what that says to me. Enjoy your relationships, right? Cherish them, nurture them. Take time for them. Live in the now. Tell people you love them now. Give your flowers to the living, right? Do things that you put off. Do them now, right? Don't wait. Don't tarry. Don't put it off. You know, I tell my wife I love her a lot of times a day, and I'm probably not even enough at that. I tell my children I love them I don't know how many times a day, and probably not enough at that, because I do. I tell you all that I love you, and how many times do I tell you that? Not enough, right? You know, we have joy in our relationships. I have joy in my relationships. I love being here. I love being with you. I love being with my family. I love being with my wife. I have joy in my relationships. God wants us to have joy in our relationships. He wants us to have happiness. He wants us to take time in the now, to build those things in our life that are going to endure with us, that are going to endure. This is your reward, your toil, for your toil which you have done, right? For your toil which you have done. Ecclesiastes 9, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. You know, Clyde gave me the best words of wisdom that anybody's ever given me. Clyde's given me a lot of good words of wisdom, don't get me wrong. But Clyde gave me very wise words one time that's so true. He said, Rex, he said, if you really want to do it, do it. Because in a few years, you won't want to do it anymore. And man, was that right. Man, was that wise. Man, is that good words. You know, if you want to do it, do it. Do it now, right? Because you're not going to want to do that in a few years. Your life's going to change. You're going to change. And it's not going to be important. My dad, my dad, he loved to fish. And he worked all the time, and man, he'd get me on weekends, we'd go fishing, right? First thing we'd do, we'd be in the boat, we'd be on the lake. We'd drive all night, get to Lake Powell, we'd sleep on the sand and sleeping bags on a tarp, and we'd fish and fish, and he just loved to do that. And he always said, and we'd go to Flaming Gorge, we'd go to Blue Mesa, and we ice fished in the winter. I mean, it was his thing, right? And he loved to do that, and he always said, man, when I retire, I'm just going to fish and fish and fish. And my dad retired and never went fishing again in his life. What Clyde says exactly right. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Do it as you're doing it for God. Do it in a way that God would be proud of you. Whatever it is. Put yourself into it. Pour yourself into it. Do it in a godly way. Do it in a godly way. Do what you do right. For there's no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, Solomon says, where you are going. It's an amazing idea. Do it. Put your might, put your soul, and put your heart into those things that are important to you. Don't put it off. Live in the now. Do it now, is what Solomon would say. In Ecclesiastes 11, he says, cast your bread on the surface of the water. So I'm just giving you little pieces of Ecclesiastes. These are kind of my little pieces that always kind of meant something to me out of the book of Ecclesiastes. So you have to read the whole book to get it all. But cast your bread on the surface of the water, Solomon says, for you will find it after many days. Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. You know, Jesus tells us, doesn't he? He says, how's he going to judge us? I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you visited me. Right? Isn't that what Jesus says? Cast your bread on the surface of the water. This is such a true, wonderful statement. And I always picture that in my mind, right? You cast it. Help people. Do for God. Live for God. Live in the now. Live today. And sometimes when you need it, it will come back to you. You don't know what misfortune may occur upon the earth. Share with others. Be generous. Give cheerfully. Give willingly. Give not under compulsion. Because someday you'll need it. Right? Someday you'll need it. And you'll find it. Divide your portion, Solomon says. Divide it with 7 or even to 8, Solomon says. You know, we don't have anything here, do we? God's just letting us use it. Truthfully, none of it really belongs to me. I'm just helping. You're helping. We're helping. You see? It's going to come back to you. Maybe it won't come back to you in this life. Maybe it'll come back to you in the next life. I don't know. But it's going to come back. What you do good, what you do right, what you do for God, what you do justly is going to come back to you. It's going to come back to you. Cast it on the surface of the waters. You know, the amazing thing about this passage to me, and I always get this picture, because we always feed these ducks, and, you know, we always cast them bread. I guess you're not supposed to feed ducks bread. Who knew? Anyway, so we cast this bread out there, right? And it doesn't ever come back. You know, if you put bread on the water, it never really comes back to you. It's not how that works, right? But you understand what he's saying. At some point, somebody's going to cast it to you, and you're going to be the beneficiary of somebody else's generosity. Solomon says, be that type of person. Be a generous person. Be a person who thinks about others, who looks towards others within your life. You know, when you get to the end of Ecclesiastes, you really start to see the mindset of Solomon, a man who had it all, a man who lacked for absolutely nothing, and yet at the end of his life struggled to find meaning with his life. I think in life we often lose sight of the big picture. You think? We get so caught up in the minutes in our lives and getting up the next morning and doing our thing, going through our life. We get so caught up in our little existence, right? That sometimes we forget the big picture. And I think for us as Christians, we really can never lose sight of the big picture of God. Because your salvation, your relationship with Jesus is something that really involves you in something that's way bigger than you. It puts you into a relationship that's much larger than you can or I can imagine it. We have to stand back and look at the big picture of God, the big picture of what God's done. God created you and I with a limited number of days. God created time. He created our existence. Limited span. A certain amount of days, a certain amount of years to get done what God wants us to get done on this earth. To touch the lives of people who we need to touch, to spread His message to a world that's lost. He expects you and I to make good use of that time. He expects us as Christians, He expects us to not only be looking out for our own welfare, but to be looking out of the welfare of other people, to be looking out of the welfare of other brothers and sisters in Christ, of other people who need our help, of other people who need our support. He expects us to see the bigger picture of our existence. The meaning of life for a Christian is really twofold. On one hand, the meaning of life for a Christian is to spread the gospel, to bring other people to Christ, and to save those souls that are lost, to look towards eternity. But on the other hand, the mission of a Christian is to live our life here in such a way that we're preparing ourselves for there, that we're preparing ourselves to meet the Lord. You know, we're inverted and extroverted, aren't we, as a Christian? We look towards ourselves, and yet we look towards others and towards the church that's created as a whole. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 12, he says, "Remember also the Creator in the days of your youth." I love how he starts that in Ecclesiastes 12:1, and I skipped some verses in there. You'll have to fill that in for yourselves. But he says, "Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no delight in them." What does that mean to you? It's funny because the teens were in class today, and it's really funny if you think back to when you were their age. Some of you that have to think pretty hard. I have to think pretty hard. If you think back to when you were their age, what was important to you then? Right then. Can you think back? What was important to you when you were their age? You know? Y'all are laughing. Y'all are smiling. Y'all are thinking, I remember what was important to me. That girl, that boy, that car, that, right? Getting out of this school, right? I remember what was important to me. You know, it's hard for you guys to do this because you're young. It's hard for you guys to do this. But just try for a minute, just in your head, you know. Try to think at what's going to be important to you when you're my age. I'm 60. Think about what's going to be important to you at 60. You see, there's times in our life when we have the energy and the motivation and the desire to do certain things. And when we're young, we have energy and motivation and desire that we don't have when we're older for certain things. It goes right back to what Clyde said. Do it when you have delight. Do it when you have the strength, when you have the energy, when you have the motivation to accomplish those things. Do it. You know, I've heard many times in the church, and I'm not pointing anybody out here, promise, not singling anybody out, but I've heard it said by many people in the church. I've heard it said, boy, when I retire, I'm just going to do so much for the Lord. I'm just going to be here, and I'm just going to do so much. But when they retire, I don't see them anymore. And I understand that. Trust me, I totally get that. At my stage of life, I totally understand how that happens. But the point is that we don't need to put that off. If we have that desire to do it and to work and to be involved in the Lord, we need to do it now, right? Because the truth is that when I retire, when I get older, I might not have a delight in them. That might not be something that I'm motivated to do anymore. You see, and that's exactly what Solomon's saying. Use that energy, use that motivation, use that desire when it comes in you to do it, because there'll come a point when you don't want to do that as much anymore. When my kids were little and we were involved in Vacation Bible School and all that stuff, man, we loved to do that. We were doing that. We were motivated to do it. I don't really have delight in doing that as much anymore as I used to. It just seems like a lot of work to me now. I don't quite have as much delight in that as I used to have. Do it when you have delight in it, when it means something to you. In Ecclesiastes 12, remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. The pitcher by the well is shattered and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. If you have the desire and the will and the fortitude and the ability to do it now. You might not have tomorrow. You might not have a year from now or 10 years from now. Do it now. Do it while you can. Make it count. Put meaning within your life for God. In Ecclesiastes 12, Solomon says the conclusion is this. So after all this stuff, and you have to go read Ecclesiastes to hear all the stuff. After all the stuff that Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, the wisest man, the richest man on earth, he started this out by saying, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. What does my life matter? All these things that I've done, these vineyards that I've built, these wives that I've had, this wealth that I've amassed, the armies that I've conquered, the borders of my territory being enlarged, what does that matter? Nothing. It's all vain. And Solomon says the conclusion when all has been heard is fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. The conclusion when all has been heard is fear God and keep his commandments. You know, Solomon's got it right, and we should have it right. The conclusion of our life should be to do that, to fear God, to keep his commandments, to live a life in service to him, to fix our eyes upon eternity, and to put our heart, to put our soul, to put our energy into those things that are really important to us, to nurture and cherish our relationships, to be the people that God calls us to be. In the end of our days, what else matters but that? What else matters in the end of your life than to be called a Christian? Nothing. Solomon was wise. We need to be wise. We need to have wisdom and set our scope, set our mind, set our sights on things that are beyond this world. If we can help you in any way, won't you let it be known while we stand?